Okay, it's now 2:30. I'd like to call a meeting of the Beaufort County Board of Education Finance Committee to order on February 8th, 2024 in the District Educational Service Center, Conference Room E, but we also have remote hybrid video conferencing. The meeting will be live streamed on the school board's YouTube channel. And requests for public comments can be accepted between 1 and 1:30 by sending an email. So if you've done that, then the next one you could have done it. Mission, of course, is to Beaufort County School District through a personalized learning approach, prepare graduates who compete and succeed in an ever-changing global society and career marketplace. Committee members, myself, Mr. Earl Campbell. Is Ms. Hay online yet?
I don't see her yet.
I don't see her yet. Okay, Ms. Hay is on.
Not on yet.
I'm very grateful that the Finance Committee stayed the same from last year to this year, because that's always a challenge to get a new committee member in this very complex committee educated up to speed, and we all are right now. So the first item on the agenda is stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the Republic for
which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and
liberty and justice for all.
justice. Okay, I'd like to get a motion to approve the agenda.
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the discussion.
Okay, and I can second that. Any discussion, Earl?
No.
None? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 2-0. See. Drive on. Do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
No public comments. Okay. Approval of the December 5th, 2023 committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Chairman, I approve, make a
Elizabeth.
motion that we approve the minutes.
Okay. Ms. Hay, would you mind seconding the approval of the minutes?
She's muted.
Elizabeth, you're muted.
Hello.
Hello, Elizabeth, we just talked about the meeting minutes and Earl made a motion to approve those minutes. Would you be willing to second that?
I have not been able to see them, so
Okay,
they're
on the screen. No.
oh,
I can put them up on.
Yes,
the
let's
screen.
we'll put them up on the screen.
perfect.
They were also emailed to you, so you should have them in your email.
Yes, they weren't the typical layout that showed who was present and all of it. Wasn't the normal layout. It just looked like notes.
Okay, well, here they're on the screen now.
Perfect. So I had reviewed everything else that looked like notes. I did not get to see this, but I second. Did you need? No, you had a second.
No, I needed a second.
Oh, I seconded the motion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Hey, aye.
Great. Okay. Now we'll move to the next item, which is the monthly Board of Education budget. And you can put that on the screen. When you look at the budget, who's District 8? Who's on District 8?
That is, I think that's Tina.
Dallas.
That's Carlton.
That's Carlton. Carlton, you've been traveling, man.
Yeah, and that was inflated, if I'm not mistaken, by
Oh.
a trip to the Cube conference in Chicago.
Well, this
maybe-
is state travel. We got out of state travel too, but at state travel, you're at 109% of budget. I just didn't know if you knew that.
Oh yes, I saw that, but we as a rookie have been trying to make sure we go and learn as much as we could. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
No problem. It's not a problem because we're only at 37% expended in that budget line. So and it's not a problem. But I just wanted to make sure you do that.
appreciate that, Colonel, and we will watch it carefully.
But I want no problem at all. And so, but for out-of-state travel, we're only 39% expended, so that's not a problem. In meeting stipends, the only one over 50%, this is a 6 months window, is number one, district number one, which is Earl. Earl, you're cool. We have only 34% of our stipend budget spent, so that's not a problem. I did see an issue on supplies and materials. We're at 216.3%.
They have to transfer stuff over in there.
We gotta transfer some stuff, okay. But our total expenditure for the board is at 40.6%, so if 50% is the limit, so we are well within budget. Any questions or comments on the board budget?
None from me. You already addressed the supplies and materials, which was what I was going to ask about.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is, we got 2 transparency reports. And I always love it when I get 2 of these to go through. Got November and December. November is 44 pages and December is 51 pages. And I went through them. And I want to tell, I got some notes from that. But I wanted to say for the public to understand that I go through this line by line every month. And the way I do that is I look at the title of what was purchased, what was spent, and I look at the high dollar stuff that don't meet the $100,000 course, just in case Tanya has purchased a $999,000 sports car. I could catch it, and she hasn't. But I did see some things that I have some questions about in the transparency reports. First of all,
Which month are you on, November or December?
it's in November.
Okay.
I don't go to the page.
Okay.
Because there's too many, but we spent $15,000 in November on background checks. I found that very unusual, not very unusual. I found it very informative. I assume that is for our volunteers that we have to do before any volunteer comes in. But is that?
Yes, and Ms. Walton could speak to this better than I could, but I think there was some expansion of background checks that was voted on by the board or something in a previous year or two ago. And it did significantly affect the amount of background checks we were doing. I think volunteers, but also school district employees, and also vendors that work in our schools, particularly during the school days. So they have exposure to children, so
Yes.
contractors. We have a lot of construction going on. So our contractors have to have background checks as well. So,
Okay.
so there's a significant amount of people that are in and out of the schools. Every contracted vendor food service, maintenance, custodial, and any others that are hired to work in our district. So it's a pretty significant cost.
Well, frankly, that's good for safety and security to know that we're doing that. But I was somewhat surprised at the cost, but I guess I shouldn't be giving the number.
$25 per person is what I heard Alice say,
Okay,
Ms. Walton say on Monday.
that's a lot of background. check.
Mhm.
Okay. I also noticed 16,000 for ferry service.
Mhm.
And that's
Yes.
ferry to Fusky, and
Yes.
that's been in the papers, and so that's what we are spending for sending our students that are in high school,
Yes,
correct?
yes, it's about $140,000 a year is
Yeah.
for that line item.
Okay. I also noticed Stephen Murray's very thankful that we spent money for kazoos, Red Cedar. And of course, this is this was first grade class, and this is their student activity fund.
Mhm.
But that's the kind of, I think the public should realize that this transparency report is everything. From utility bills, big construction costs to kazoos, that everything is listed, and this is available on our website, correct?
Yes.
For the public.
Yes,
So for transparency, it is truly a transparency report. But for the public, if you read some of these things, you have to understand it also tells you who the vendor is. But vendors often have common names in different locations. And when I first came on the board, we had a member of the public look through the transparency report, and she found a report from something like H&K Incorporated or something weird. And she looked it up on Google, and it was a strip club. And Whale Branch was used it. So somebody in Whale Branch, she said, went to a strip club. And what she didn't do is do a wide Google search to find out that this H&K Corporation was also the name of a company that provides smart boards. And that's what was purchased, was a smart board. The husband of the person that made this claim was on the committee that went and looked what we should have in our first referendum. And the principal, now Dr. Dixon, pointed out to him that this is the strip club that your wife found. This is the smart board that they bought. So I just tell the public when they look at this, they should do a little research before they have any major concerns. What about tax on adult meals?
sales tax.
I think you've told me about this.
so when a teacher buys a meal in the school cafeteria, it's subject to sales tax. So we have to capture that sales tax and pay once a month to the Department of Revenue.
So we pay the teacher sales tax, so they don't have to pay this.
They pay it as well, and then we capture the amount and submit it to the on the sales tax return monthly.
Okay.
So it's passed on, it is passed on to the teacher or to the employee.
Okay. All right. I just noticed that in there. Also, well, yeah. Is there any other questions on the transparency report from Ms. Hay or Earl?
No,
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the $100,000 cards.
$100,000.
Yes, $100,000 and
Because it's
the consolidated report. You want to put that one up, the first one?
the first one's November consolidated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I was gonna look at, and wait a minute now. It's,
This is the
Yeah, that's the first one. Notice November Dominion Energy bill was 212,000. And that was in 2022, but this 2023, it was 533,000. We must have used a heck of a lot of energy, or it's a different billing cycle.
It could have been the number of days in the billing cycle. It could have been the temperature. We might have had a cooler November than we did in the previous year. More energy was used. Likelihood is that the November 2023 probably had a longer number of days in the billing cycle, or it could potentially have been two billing cycles put together that were paid in 1 month. I mean, that's probably more the chances.
But that, that would be interesting to have, a little more detail for sure, because, that's a little bit of an increase is understandable given the inflation in energy costs, but 100% increase.
And sometimes it falls when the billing is due and where it falls in the payment cycle, if it comes to the end of the month. If the previous year we may have, the payable cycle might have been, no.
They're all paid the 10th and the 17th that month. So, and it looks like one for every school, so had to have been a variance in the amount of wattage or kilowatts or whatever you use, so we can check into that for the next.
We need to have
Since
that.
it did double,
Yeah.
so we'll check into it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this report? Hearing none. Do we have the key card transaction check payments?
We have a December.
Yeah, December one. Yeah. Again, for the public, we use our P card, that's a purchase card, that's our credit card to pay. I'm somewhat surprised that some of the, I know our contractors will take it. And Dominion Energy takes credit card. But the nutrition folks, nutrition contractor, they take credit cards. I see them on there. It's on page 3.
Yeah, these, so these are not necessarily just P card, they're also checks as well, they're just all checks and P card over 100,000.
Yeah, that's right, there's checks.
So
Okay, got
nutrition group, that is the nutrition group, our contract
Yeah,
vendor,
okay.
and they are paid
Yeah.
by electronic funds transfer each month.
Got it. Yeah, now that I see it, I look over the column and it does say check.
We are moving a lot to the EFT transactions at
Yeah.
ACH at
Right,
the advice of auditors. They're saying it's safer than transmitting checks across,
yes,
in the mail, and especially with the routing numbers and the account numbers at the bottom of every check. So those are more secure payments. We're really moving a lot lately to more of that environment.
well, we also get a cut.
Well, no, these are EFT and ACH are not.
those are
They're
the fund
not
transfer.
a card, they're just.
They're fund transfers.
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Okay. Any question on that? Ms. Hay, do you have any questions on that?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. And the next piece is the December, the which is November.
We did November,
We did November.
we just did
We
December.
just did December. Okay,
Oh, you wanna do ESER update next?
yeah, ESER update is next. The ESER update on,
This is just combined into one report, it's just the latest and greatest. As updated as of January 26th. And Ms. Mattson is gonna give you an update today.
good. Hi Denise.
How are you guys? Well, it's kind of getting redundant now because we've just got a system going on
Yeah,
at
we
this
do.
point here.
We do.
So, we're at 85% of all these ESSER funds, spent. We're at 77% of the last one that we're left with. Feel very good that we are on track to expend all of those funds. We do have 8 months left, and I'll tell you in December and January, our expenditures was a little over $3 million on the summary page. And so we have a little 11.5 million left. And I go through a list and just look at all the bigger expenditures, kind of like what you said you did, and pull those out here, and you can see that we've had those are our bigger costs for the last 2 months there.
Yep.
And there's been, I just finished meeting with quarterly with the project managers on their programs, and we haven't run into any areas of concern in that.
We are cognizant that we have to have all encumbered payments made by the cutoff date.
Yes, that,
So we can't have bills kind of waiting or vendors not sending in bills
that's correct.
before that.
After that.
That is a drill with federal funds that you have to be in front of. Otherwise, you get stuck with a late invoice that comes in.
Right, the encumbrance date, I believe, is September 30th, and the paid everything by December 31st, with claims to be made as soon as, I think even before we're supposed to come back for the new year, so January 5th or something. Our date is June 30th. So we're not playing.
Well, we know we have some summer activities like summer school and things, but in fact, today, one of them like, hey, they didn't spend that. We had it there. Were we moving it to something that that was the program people. We've given people November 15th dates, extended them to February now. And so, we're especially on supplies and things like that. That's because of receiving items.
Right.
And summer school should end by June 30th, so that should wrap up the bulk of the summer activities. So that's our goal.
Okay.
And then that gives us time to wrap things up, assess where we are, see if there's anything that needs to be done at that point.
Okay. Ms. Hay, do you have any questions on the ESSER?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Denise. Now, the quarterly financial report. Where you start out, I had a mini stroke when I saw the revenue, but then I saw your point, so let's go ahead.
So let's just talk about that up front, the elephant in the room. Tax revenue is not so great in December, and the reason for that is that the tax bills went out, some as early as late November, and I've heard some taxpayers say they didn't get theirs until late January. I received mine early December. So as you can see, with a January 15th deadline, many taxpayers likely would have not paid right before Christmas. So I too had a heart failure when I saw it. And then thought, okay, we're going to see a recovery of this in January. So we received information from the treasurer's office around the 20th of the month following the month of collections. So we are likely not to receive information until about February 20th or the week of. So we still have another about 2 weeks. And before we get that official information, I think that some will still trickle in February and so on. But January is a critical month for us. And as I thought about today's conversation, I thought I'm always looking ahead at what the next steps are. And I think we need to talk about those collections in depth next month and have that as an agenda item at this committee meeting. So, because we won't have another financial report, but we can certainly tell you what those tax collections are. So we monitor them. As soon as they come in, I'm like pushing the ladies, I'm like, please give me some numbers right now, I need. And so we really rely heavily. They have two major implications. One is how are we doing this year and how are we gonna end up this year? But also we're getting ready to build a budget based on those numbers for next year. So it has this year, it affects both fiscal years. So it is really critical. And then debt service, which is an ancillary fund here, it also affects how are we doing with our tax revenue versus our projections, and are we using the proper amount to establish or to justify the millage at the rate it's at. So multiple circumstances surrounding those numbers, and they're one of the most important things that we monitor each year. So
I'm just thinking 5 years ago, my first board meeting on this committee, we had this revenue thing and we ended up being short $9 million. So that's what got me beating, and I'm glad that you explained the late I'm gonna talk to Maria and say, come on now, what's going on? You know, why do we have these late? She's the one who sends them out.
I think the auditor sends them out,
The auditor,
or one of.
well,
I'm not sure.
I'll find out, but that's needless worry. We operate on a pretty narrow stream here, and luckily I looked at our fund balance and everything. We were fine. I'm not worried about not paying the bills or anything, but this is concerning to me. So I will reach out to David. I'll call David too. I'll talk to David and Maria and just say, please, folks, understand, you need to calm me down. Go ahead. Anything else you'd like to
Let's see, just a reminder, this time we usually have a TAN by now, that we did not have a TAN this year, so that is a difference. We'll have some savings in our budget because we did budget a little bit for some interest costs, so we'll have maybe 35,000 or 50,000 in that range. That is typically used for those for the interest cost on our TAN. It's actually 20,000 we budgeted for, so that'll be available for reallocation when or if needed. State revenues and expenditures were are down just a bit this year as well. Was that due to talk about? Was that due to ESSER funding? So federal funding?
You're talking about federal expenditures. Yes, ESSER too.
Okay, it was a combination. It was ESSER 2. We had ESSER 2 and 3 going on at the same time, so we did have some lower levels at this point during the year, and then it'll pick back up before we get to the end of the year and balance that out. Local property tax collections also down, as I mentioned, at 36% versus 58% this time last year. And the variance is due to the issuance of tax bills later than normal. So capital projects, we have expended 75%. They are 75% complete at the end of the second quarter. So that is pretty significant high percentage that there. So that does show the progress that we've made through the referendum and 8% funds. And the 2019 referendum projects are 99.2% paid and encumbered as of December 31st. So that demonstrates that we are nearing the end of that expending period. So lots of details behind that. I scoured through every page of those, the details, but this provides some really good information And it shows you where some things are remaining to be wrapped up, so.
Yeah, I've gone through it. And the way I go through it on the expenditure side, this is half of the year done. Budgets 50%. I look at all budgets that are over 50%. And I'll start with page 12. Supervision of special program, 111%.
Yes, so I too had some concerns about this area when reviewing. So our student services division, which is nursing, mental health, social work, those are the categories under this area. They also have special education in their area of responsibility. And so we have actually planned a meeting with Ms. White, Dr. White, to sit down and look at all of her various sources of funding. There's some in special education, looking at these, and to analyze where we are as a whole. She does have additional funding in the other category, and I suspect that we may have purchased some things for schools out of this one that should have been in direct instruction.
Yeah.
And so, as opposed to rushing and cleaning this up, we are going to take our time and make sure we get it right. And so we have a meeting planned with her to go through all of those categories. She also has a lot of special revenue funds, so she has multiple funding sources to juggle.
Right.
But we've already had a discussion. I talked with Ms. Hamlin the other day, and we're going to meet with her and discuss with her team where we are on that budget.
Okay. How about page 15, maintenance and operations, 58.4% expended.
The was the 276. You know, that's in maintenance.
That was, we had a year and a half ago, we had additional funds at the end of the year that we were going to have, and we worked with Robert's team to find out if there were any capital purchases that we could do with those extra funds in that year. These were bleachers at Hilton Head High School that were procured at that time.
Jennifer, I want to come to the table so they can give you a phone line.
These were bleachers that we procured at that time that did not meet that 630 deadline.
Okay.
And so the expenditures fell into this year.
So is the fund slide from previous. Okay.
So we'll just need to get them to do a budget transfer from one of their other line items and to cover that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, how about page 17? Technology and data processing, 52.4%. It's not much over, but I'm always concerned when I see technology going over.
That's net purchasing. I don't have a specific answer to that one, but I think it's the 62% here in services that's they've used. $2 million of the $3 million that for purchase services. The services they use are typically like outside engineering services coming in to either do testing or like pen testing, or if we're having a problem on a network, then there's a. I know that they had Extreme Networks who handled is some kind of one of the vendors that provides either a firewall service or one of those. They had them come in right before we had a weather day where we had to stay home, work remotely, and they had a vendor come in, fly in to the area and work on a problem, a network issue that we're having. So they have engineers sort of come in and do work like that. Now that's a $2 million of spending this point during the year, so that I'm sure there's a combination of things there. So I'll follow up with Mark Shohan to find out the details behind that.
Okay, how about athletics at 53.6 on the same page?
It's gonna be your playoff stipend hitting for your fall sports.
So fall sports such as football and transportation
So
costs.
that's an upfront.
There were a lot of charter
Yeah.
buses for long, far away playoff games, and then stipends for the coaches as well.
Football is always expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, page 22, food service. I'm not too concerned about 51.72, but that's something that we have to make sure we stay on top of.
5172 is the revenues. And so we are in good shape. Our participation is actually up because we added 3 CEP schools.
Oh, yes.
So our participation is up, meaning USDA. That's the reason why the USDA reimbursement is so far up from 3.7 million to 5.2.
Okay,
So as we increase those CEP numbers of CEP schools, we see more students eating breakfast and lunch, which is a very good thing. The spending there is 37%, so we're still well under the expenditures, and we've been having some really good profitable years in the food service fund, and are reinvesting a significant amount of money back into that program in the form of new equipment and replacement of the vehicles in the food service department, both to transport food to sites, off-site locations, where we serve students, and to transport workers that come here to the district and are assigned to a school, and we transport them. So there's all of those costs as well, but so we're good.
CEP schools.
Oh, yeah. Sure. CEP is Community Eligibility Program. It is a USDA program in which each year we calculate the amount of participation at each school based on and the poverty levels of each school and students in that population. And there is a formula that allows us to add more schools, and CEP means that there is no cost to the students. So they are 100% of their meals, 100% of the first breakfast and first lunch are at no cost to the students or parents. So the entire school basically is a free lunch and breakfast status. It means that there are no unpaid meals to collect. That is a significant benefit for our school administration, because that is quite a burden of trying to collect that each year. And it just has a wide array of benefits. So each year we look at the calculations to see if we can add more schools, but we have to balance it with the USDA reimbursements to ensure that we don't lose money from adding more schools. There's a fine balance between the calculations, and we have to make sure we at least break even or calculate a small profit in order for it to make it make sense for us to add additional schools. But I've just recently today requested the calculations for the upcoming year to see and provide a few scenarios of what that might look like.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, sorry, I should have explained the CEP a little
Now,
better.
food service still under you?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Well, Monday at a community meeting, I got beaten up,
Mhm.
and the beat up was about the importance of a nutritious breakfast on student learning for the rest of the day. And the beat up was they're serving Pop-Tarts 4 out of the 5 days for the breakfast, and that's not necessarily nutritious. I said, well, I will pass that along.
Our Pop-Tarts aren't, I completely understand, having had children in the schools, they're not the same as you buy in the store with the frosting on top, but I do understand there are a lot of carbs in those, and I do encourage more of, protein and that sort of thing. So we'll talk, I met today with our director and I'll certainly pass that along.
Okay, I appreciate it. Page 28. Capital projects and 8%. I have to tell you, that has improved dramatically in the last 4 years. As far as closeouts of projects and 8%. We were 5, 6, 7 years behind in the past. We're now getting into the realm of reasonableness. So I just want you to make sure that operations is still sensitive to the fact that we need to close out these jobs so we can use unused money in other ways. That's a big deal.
And Colonel, if I could tag on to that, as I learn more about the intricacies of the operations and interface with financial, I'll sit down with CFO Crosby and make sure we're vigilant on that and continue that success. So thanks for highlighting that.
That it is a great step forward into what we have done in the past. Okay, that's all I have for the quarterly. Ms. Hay, do you have anything else that you would like to have answered, or questions or comments about that?
I do not. Just as usual, I feel like I say this every meeting. Thank you to Ms. Crosby for all the wonderful numbers, pie charts, and graphs. It's very efficient and really helps when looking over all of this data.
Thank you. I have a great team that puts it all together.
Earl, do you have any comments, questions?
No, one question. To go back to the revenue. What about the folks that's going to challenge it to county about their tax bill? It's too high. And some of that even didn't come in yet. So when will that?
That will linger probably through the remainder of our end of our fiscal year or school year. What they require is for tax bills to actually be paid, and then you appeal it, and then you may or may not get a refund. And that refund can be months later. So I think the later in the year it becomes, now, well, let's see, the tax bills will due January 15th. I know someone very close to me, my father-in-law, actually requested a refund and received it within just a week or two. But it was a relatively small issue. But I think those they're probably bottleneck here shortly, if not already, and refunds will take much longer to process. So I anticipate, and that's impossible to predict because those are basically just deductions straight out of our bank account at the treasurer's office. So we record, we project on what we've received so far, and we project, we have to consider that there could be some deductions from that as we go forward to the rest of the year. It's impossible.
You know,
to
in a
predict.
reassessment year, you have a lot more appeals because you say, my God, my property's not worth that much, and try to convince the treasurer that it's, or the auditor, yes, that it's not. That was one of the issues that we had in the last reassessment year, is we did have some paybacks that account.
Yeah. Now, one positive thing to note is our interest income is really strong right now. I think in just in capital projects, we're seeing like $2 million so far this year. In capital projects interest income. So we are making the investments that they are making are showing some gains. Everything's invested in the local government investment pool.
Yeah.
And so that has significant returns right now.
Oh, that's good news. Okay, this the last item, or not the last item, but the second to last item, Riverview Charter School funding. Just to let the committee know that I've kind of expanded our relationship with Riverview. I'm going to be attending their finance committee meetings. I've attended the last one that they had, talking to them about the expenditures for the new referendum. And they brought up a concern about what they pay to the district every month. And you remember that this has happened before. They pay how much for the rental of the Shell Point School?
Just under 49,000.
$49,000 a month. And they said, why are we paying for $49,000 a month? And I said, I think it's because of indirect costs. And so Miss Crosby has been capturing this, and we're not done capturing it all. So far, she has indirect costs are about $73,000 a month. So they're getting a deal. And I said, you might not want to renegotiate. But we've got more to do on that. And I got a couple questions from them. They got cut in their budget because of the new state
Funding
formula. Now, does that only apply to state funds, or does that apply to local and state funds?
Just state.
I thought so.
No, well, let me,
Okay,
no, it will be to all. And the reason for that is because there are new weightings this past year that are established as part of, I think was it at the same time as the state funding formula change or before? Yes. Okay, the weightings changed. Special education students significantly increased. So if they might have been a weighting, a regular education student, K through 12 is weighted at 1.0. A special education student before the change were across the board different values, 1.25 for maybe speech and maybe 2.5 for the profound students. Now all of the special education students are all weighted at a 2.0 weighting. The school district has, I don't know the exact number, I would say around 1,600, 1,500 special education students. Riverview Charter School has a very small number of special education students. So with that and the other weightings changes, the school district's weighted pupil unit number, which is what we use to calculate the student cost or the state allocation or local allocate, the combination of what is allocated to Riverview, so we take the total revenue divided by the weighted pupil unit of all students in the district, weighted, and then get a per pupil number and then multiply it by Riverview's number. So our numbers went way up, driving the allocation, the per pupil student number down.
okay.
Student cost per student down. Then Riverview's special ed numbers declined,
Right,
and their total decline of students was about 33 in the weighted student number.
right.
So a combination of our weighted student number going up, theirs going down, resulted in almost $1 million difference between last year's budget and this year's budget. And
Because,
so I took that to them and compared, did an analysis
Right.
side by side of the previous year to the current year, and went to their school and met with them and discussed that.
yeah,
Mhm.
they were very appreciative of that. But I've had some other questions. I try to compare them to other schools. We have other pre-K through 8. We have 2 pre-K through 8 schools, and that's River Ridge and Robert Smalls. They are a K through 8 school. And when I look at the difference in per pupil costs, the cost at Robert Smalls, I know, is considerably more than the cost at Riverview on a per student basis. But the special ed explains, I think, a great deal of that, because they have the, no, you know, there's special ed and there's special ed. There's special ed that has to be in a separate classroom and so on. And there's special ed that are in a regular classroom with accommodations. So,
And also
Yeah.
would contribute to that is Robert Smalls has a very different population, it's demographic than
Yes.
Riverview.
Yes.
And we in the district, due to we have apply a poverty weighting to schools with a certain level of poverty very high or so on. And we allocate more staffing to schools in that category than others.
Okay.
So that would attribute to a higher per pupil cost in their areas.
the other issue is they don't necessarily follow the teacher salary step formula. Where it's, you know, we start with our starting salary and then every year you're a new step. I've been told that they do not necessarily follow that they are not constrained by the state to use that they give salaries based on experience and performance.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, that's, in a perfect world, that's wonderful, but when we determine their funding that we provide them, how do we determine what part of that funding is dedicated to teachers' salary? If we're apples and oranges on how we manage teacher salaries.
Well, that's I guess the beauty of a charter school is they don't have to follow our rules.
Understand?
And so our allocation does not dictate whether they spend it on salaries, benefits, supplies, or how we cannot dictate their salary schedule. I think they do have a salary schedule. They add an additional, in the past experience that I learned was that they added an additional 10 days onto their teachers. So they were paying a 200-day schedule, but yet still following the schedule in some way. I don't know if that still applies or not, but that's what separates them from being one of like our other schools is they're the only school that we provide an allocation and they get to choose what to spend on it. The others do not. We dictate exactly what they receive.
Okay, so I'm going to try to explain this to their finance chair, who's in CPA as well. So she's more qualified than me to talk about this in some ways. But let's say hypothetically that we raise teachers' salaries across the board 4%. I don't know what it's going to be for the next fiscal year.
Well, the $2,500 increase that's proposed by the state is a 5% increase.
Yeah, it's a 5%.
Mhm.
Okay, so would that mean that they will probably see a 5% increase?
Not necessarily, because we don't get funded for all of it.
I understand.
2,500.
Yeah.
So their calculation is based on how much revenue we receive, local tax revenue and state revenue. And we put them together and divide by the weighted pupil unit. So they just get a proportionate share
Of the weighted pupil
the
unit.
weighted pupil unit. So it doesn't, it's not about what compensation for certain things, because all of the state funds just kind of roll up together
Okay,
and we calculate.
but
They just get a
can I say in general terms that you can anticipate in the next year's funding that you will see a increase in your salary pot? Can you say that? Can I say
I would
that?
not.
Okay.
I wouldn't even say that you'll get an increase in your allocation because our weighted pupil units make a, change significantly. Again, we could have a drastic increase in multilingual learners population. So until I see the numbers, I wouldn't project anything right now for them until we'll do a budget projection for them and provide that to them.
Yeah.
Probably in March.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
every year I provide a budget projection and I send it to them, ask them to review, verify, see if I have anything missing. And then we will agree on a certain amount that they should take to their board. So I without having all of that data, I wouldn't make any predictions on what that might be, because you never know what the state's gonna do.
Well, you know, I've had a teacher, one of the teachers in that school, lived in my neighborhood, and last year she came up to me, oh, thank you so much for increasing teacher pay. Really? And so you got more pay? Yeah, okay, good. I obviously, but you know, they have a completely different system.
Yes.
So I really can't comment on whether we were at fault or take credit for that.
I would have taken credit.
Yeah, well, I think I did. I think I did. But
You're welcome.
okay, well, that's.
Colonel, can I?
Yes, yes, sir.
I'd like to just make a brief comment. The Madam Chair and I toured Riverview Charter School last week. Phenomenal school, really is. As are the other non-charter schools in River Ridge as well. And I asked and I learned a lot. I really did. And I asked about the SPED students, and they have SPED, but they don't have the profound designation. So most of their SPED students are speech related. So Ms. Crosby, when you have that weighted number per student for the various schools, how does that affect it? Colonel just touched on it, but I just want to make sure I understand.
We apply so when we take their total revenue divided by our weighted pupil number and get a per student cost, we apply it to Riverview's weighted student number. So if they have special ed students, they would count at a 2.0 ratio. And so they would also be compensated for additional funding for those weightings for special ed.
So special ed is special ed. There's a special ed student just has a speech issue. It's the same kind of funding that a special ed is
Yes, sir.
wheelchair bound and
Profound student,
profound.
yes.
So it's no different.
That's correct. Is that
So-
correct?
So that may be a way to help, you know, because they're weighted at 2.0. And I think the first number I heard was 1.25 for a special ed and 2.5. So, you know,
Those are
I'm
the
just
whole-
trying to the whole, yeah. I'm with you. Okay,
Yes.
I understand that.
Mhm. Yes, we do weight Riverview's numbers, and that's why I email it to them, have them verify their student numbers and in what categories they are. So we list kindergarten through 5th grade, and we list every disability and how many students are in each of those disabilities. And then they get the add-on weightings. There's a few additional weightings that are a partial, like 0.15 for pupils in poverty or high achieving or multilingual students. So we have a much higher population of all of those students, and they're weighted heavier for our district than theirs, but we do apply a weighting to theirs as well for that calculation. So we're passing that along.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Hay, do you have any questions about Riverview?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So next item on the agenda is future topics. Earl, do you have any future topics?
Oh, you mentioned about the list, the financial.
The
Yes,
budget
so-
priority, the budget
Budget
priority.
list, budget priority list.
Yeah.
Yeah, could we, let's have this talk about that as a follow-up, the budget priority list. That's a good suggestion, because we need to talk about how the priority list will be applied. We have to get down into the eaches of that a little bit, I think. Yeah, that's a good topic. Ms. Hay, do you have anything?
No, that was my suggestion as well, the follow through on the budget priorities. So thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, that's good. I've got a future topic. You know, you gave us some data on cost per school. Now I need a little more, that's a macro look. I need to get a little more micro into this. To see the breakout, not only the cost, but the cost by function. And specifically, I'm looking for administrative costs. Teacher salary costs, to break it out by administrative, teacher, and, you know, classified, you know, the different personnel levels. So we can see what the different costs are at the different schools. We also need to see maintenance and custodial. I think it's in the big picture, but it's not broken out. What's maintenance and what's custodial. I will also, so if I know that's a lot of work to do, so that's an elephant, take it a bite at a time, you know, if you could start populating that data more each month, that to make it so that it can be done, you figure out how much you can do. But eventually, I really think the board needs to see very micro kind of cost data on each school. And I know it opens a can of worms, I know that, because there's other reasons why costs are different. But we owe it to the community and to the board to know exactly what these schools cost us, just like General Motors needs to know what every one of its plants costs.
I mean, I think we can do it relatively easily if we're able to capture it in the way the system will provide it. And so we can do all locations with a page break by location. We could, or into an Excel spreadsheet by by object code. It's going to give you a lot more than these. It's going to give you every one of them, but we can provide that, and it may even give multi-year information. So it's capable of doing it, just figuring out what the best method of doing it, and then cleaning it up a bit to put the headers and things like that and page numbers on. So it'll be a project, we'll work on it and try to have something for you by the next meeting.
Thank you. Hey, Carlton, the next item is something that I just heard on Tuesday night. I heard the results, and I'm sure in your operations committee it's going to be talked about, the results of the principals survey on how they felt the custodial contract was being handled. And it was not good. I think average was 6 out of 10, 10 being the highest. And so what I heard Dr. Rodriguez say to Robert is, let's put it out for bid for a new contract. Okay, that's going to have impact on our budget next year because that contract will cost more. We know that. So that's, if at the next meeting you can kind of give us a wild kind of guess. Remember, we did a study to see what it cost to bring it in-house.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing the results, outputs of that.
Right, we had that. So now,
$2.1 million.
yeah, 2.1 million, right?
Done that stuff.
So we already got that. Now we need to figure out kind of what we're looking at. And I know it's hard to say because we have to wait for bids, but we have to anticipate that question is going to come up. If it's within 2.1 million, I know that there's gonna be a number of members on the board who say, bring it back in the house.
And
Cost of that.
Yes, Carl.
yeah, I'm going to say, hopefully that research on the principal's feedback will provide some granularity as to the specific areas where it was very deficient. And we can start a conversation and building up with operations group as to is that addressable? Can it be addressed in the short term? So that we can have a real precise methodology of comparing all the component parts of if you decide to go out and what those will cost, or can the deficit in satisfaction be addressed by more precise management with the current provider. So we'll take a real granular look at that, and we'll be happy to come back to this group.
Yeah, I just wanted to give finance folks a heads up that we have an issue coming up, perhaps.
Very much so.
We met with facility staff recently and are very aware of it.
Okay.
You said that was 2.5 million?
So it's about a $2.1 million increase to the current contract, which is I think 6.6 million or something.
Yeah.
So we're talking about $8 million.
So that's includes benefits and everything?
It's just a contract.
Okay,
So it would
cover there.
okay.
This will be a big deal. Yeah. Okay. Any other, yes, you have a few.
Yes, sir. I have actually a few. I'm gonna have two administrative rules that I needed to update. One is on budget transfers and one is on district wellness. I am the oversight person for the district wellness committee. And we are reconvening that. And I pulled out the administrative rule and it had some incorrect information that I need to update.
Okay.
The other is budget transfers, and then the third is OE 5.1 regarding the fund balance policy. I'd like to talk about increasing that to meet the need of not getting a tan each year.
Right. Okay. Okay. Anything else? All right.
Our next meeting,
Our next meeting,
Thursday, March 14th.
Thursday, March 14th. That's at 2:30.
2:30.
Is that all right, Ms. Hay?
Yes, I see. board meeting.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, great. Is that okay with you,
Yes.
Earl?
Okay, that's fine.
March 14th,
So that evening is the joint
joint school board
board
meeting.
meeting,
but
but
That's not till 6 o'clock.
correct.
Yeah, okay. March 14th at 2:30.
That will be the joint SIC meeting.
Yeah,
That's
right.
here.
We haven't determined the location yet.
Yeah.
Most likely on this side since we did it on the other side last.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we have finished with the agenda, so with unanimous consent, unless there's an objection, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.